Hello, everyone. Welcome to Energy Movement podcast with me, Elvira Rakova. And today I'm glad to have here in our imaginary studio Chris Hyde from Atlas Copco Air and Gas Solutions. Hi, Chris. How are you today?
Hi, Elvira. I'm very well, thank you. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to the podcast. I'm really excited. I've seen some of the good stuff that you've done with the guys in the US and across Europe. So I'm really excited to have an open conversation about how things are going. But I'm very well, thank you. And I hope you are too.
Yes, thanks, Chris. So, the idea of our podcast is not just to bring compressed air and any gas new solutions into the community of compressed air and gas solutions. So, I noticed that there are many people that are listening to us, they come from other industries. So, and I'm trying to make them more excited about and fascinated about all the possible application of compressed air, compressed gases, and those kind of things. So, can you please just tell me a little bit more about yourself? What exactly you do? What is because I work mostly with compressed air, but what are the other gases? What you also do?
So thank you for that, Elvira. Well, I look after three main core business lines for Atlas Copco. So the first one is high pressure, the second one is low pressure, and the third one is industrial gases. So as you can imagine, Elvira, there's an awful lot of different applications, customers, and some wonderful different applications that we work with within all these pillars. So if I break it down just a little bit, typically within low pressure, we typically work with wastewater treatment customers, food and beverage manufacturers for pneumatic conveying, for example. So moving, let's say, cereal in from one silo of the site to another part of the site. That's just a very basic, simple solution. And then when we look at high pressure, this typically tends to be green applications, so the new up and coming applications such as hydrogen in terms of power generation or carbon capture and storage. So that sector of the business is extremely interesting in terms of we are really delving into sustainability and the way that the worldwide business is changing, and we want to enter those markets. So that's the second sector. Then the third sector is industrial gases. So that includes nitrogen and oxygen predominantly. So this can be used again in a various amount of sectors, from food and beverage to laser cutting to automotive, across the board in terms of sectors. So the reality is that these applications all have crossovers. So some low pressure customers also require industrial gases and high pressure, and vice versa. So yeah, it's super exciting. And my background really, Elvira, is I've always been within the compressed air field. So I started off as an energy consultant with a local distributor in the UK. And this is probably where my passion came from in terms of I really wanted to understand and make the customer acknowledge that actually compressed air is what I would call the fourth utility. So we have gas, electricity, water, and then compressed air. And without all those, many manufacturing facilities just would not function, and we could not manufacture anything. So for me, starting off as an energy consultant and then slowly working through my career through different regions in the world, different applications, it's been super exciting so far.
Okay, for those who cannot, who just listening to our podcast and don't see our interview, Chris, you really have a sparkle in your eyes when you speak about compressed air and gases. So I love to talk with people like you. So tell me then, what is then your favorite application? So when the customer comes with a certain application, you're like, finally, today is like this lucky day. What is your favorite one?
Oh, that's a very tricky question, because I have three brilliant sales team that work for me across the three pillars. But if I could pinpoint one, I would actually say that hydrogen, going back 2, 3, 4 years ago, there was a real boom in terms of the interest in hydrogen and how the European community and worldwide community can support that in terms of government funding and grants. But we actually saw a little bit of a dip the last couple of years. So as things changed, the global economy changed. So when I come across a hydrogen project now, I feel like we've in terms of the wave, I feel like we're on the way back up in terms of really to hit the peak of the industry.
Oh,
So
okay,
for
that's
me,
very interesting. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So for me, Elvira, I think hydrogen is probably super interesting because it really is an alternative to, let's say, traditional diesel generators, where we all know, as part of the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Pact in
Mhm.
Paris, the climate change, that we're all driving towards the same ultimate goal, and that's effectively carbon reduction and reducing power consumption. So I think that's a real big, interesting application for me.
Ah, okay. So, and the hydrogen, could you please explain us more in what sense the hydrogen will be? Is it like for the storage? What kind of the solution you have in Atlas Copco for hydrogen?
Yes, so we offer a couple of different solutions within Atlas Copco. So we have our H2Y product and H2P products. And to make it a little bit simpler, these products effectively are generating hydrogen and storing it ready for the customer as part of a containerized solution. So, for example, if there are local events or let's say exhibitions that traditionally have backups from hydrogen, from diesel, sorry, and are powered by generators, we would use one of our units along with a customer who would provide the unit to the end user and use that to power their show, exhibition, event, whatever it may be. So it's typically replacing the traditional power generation equipment.
Okay, so that's very interesting. And I actually wanted to come back to the beginning of your career when you were an energy expert, and wanted to ask you, so I agree with you totally that we need to bring awareness to the customers, to manufacturing, that it is a fourth utility compressed air, and many times customers they don't get a bill. This is how much a compressor costs. So there is a bill of the electricity. So in your experience, how market has changed since when you started regarding the awareness, regarding how people pay attention, like energy managers, so facility managers pay attention to compressed air? Like where we're now at? Are we optimistic, or it's rather than a lot of work to do still?
There is always more work to do to start with. So there's always more work to do. Even if we think we have the best solution today, there is always a better way. And that's quite a big Atlas Copco principle. But from when I first started, even traditional compressors, which used to be fixed speed, for example, without a variable frequency drive, were quite common. Now, within the last 15 years, we've seen that the VSD technology has kind of become the standard across the industry. So we know that not all VSDs are equal from one manufacturer to another and from one compressor type to another compressor type. But what we do know is that if we can actually provide the air required at the correct pressure, we can make significant savings. And I do believe genuinely that many customers are starting to really buy into that philosophy and really invest in their companies. And I think probably since the pandemic, I've seen the biggest change in terms of customers are now looking how to actively reduce energy bills, costs, reduce carbon footprint. So I think the work that was done over the last 15 to 20 years in terms of promoting variable speed technology, just as one example, is paying dividends, but there's still a long way to go for sure.
And are there like any other ways, I mean, not talking apart the VSD technology, some other ways that customers think about the holistic approach? Because, I work mostly on the demand side, so this is where I
Mhm.
start with. And then I realized that, okay, there is no options to work on the supply side if you so it's a connected system. So what is it in general, how customers they approach this? Is it only the compressor room optimization? Is like buying a new compressor? What is like in general the ways to reduce the energy consumption?
So when we look at the holistic approach, you are absolutely right. It's not just the compressor. We know that around 80% of the the compressor's cost is actually from the production. So the actual investment of the compressor is quite a small part of the customer's journey, let's
Yes,
say, on
that's
the
true.
life
Yeah.
cycle. So I think what I've seen is that, particularly in North America, we used to see quite a lot of compressors being oversized. It was just historic that they would have the largest possible compressors, and that was kind of what was provided to site. But now we're seeing that we're not just looking at the types of compressors. We're starting to look at the pipe work. We're starting to look, is that as efficient as possible? Do we have leaks within the system that we can repair and improve efficiencies? Which, if we can then look at the pipe work alongside the compressor, that brings us back to the size of the compressor. We can potentially reduce the size of the compressor. And it means that we can then look at the system as a whole. So then that comes to any additional equipment required. It could be pressure regulators, it could be different dryers, control systems. There's a whole, from the electricity input right through to the customer's end product, we have to look at the whole process. Now, we will be quite biased. I'll be quite open and honest about that. We'll always look at the compressed air, and then from the plant room, delivering that air to the customer or whoever it may be. But customers as a whole now, I have seen much more in the UK in particular and Europe, where we're looking at a much more holistic approach. And I'm seeing more energy managers, energy consultants in the field who are starting to design systems which not only monitor the big power usages, so the compressors, the chillers, whatever it may be, but actually monitoring flow in pipe work, pressure drop across site. And I think there is a big holistic picture to look at for sure.
Yes, I agree with you. I think it's extremely important, especially nowadays with the rise in energy demand. I'm a bit scared about all the AI algorithms. Now I see that I think today was the news that Paul Altman said that the consumption are going to just like skyrocket for the data centers. And I'm just thinking this is exactly the right thing of thinking about the energy efficiency, right? So we need the oversized compressors, oversized systems. It's both a problem, but it's also a solution. It's such a low-hanging fruit just to start the optimization again. And I have another also question about the compressed air and also other gas application. A lot of people think that the electrification it's the way to go ahead. And of course, there is no single answer to that. There is no like yes or no, but there are so many things and so many applications for the compressed air, for different gases, for compressed gases. Could you please maybe talk about more like where else it is used, how you see that the compressed air or gases application, it's actually the solution to the problem rather than the problem itself. So because we have so many critical application like in food and beverage you mentioned before, right? So we have the mining applications and all those kind of things. So pharmaceuticals. So hydrogen, it's a great example, and I see that there is rising interest again. So what is else like fascinating you find about our industry, so we can make our listeners more excited?
No, it's a very interesting question, Elvira. I think there's many answers to this across each of the different sectors and applications, but I do think we are moving away from a traditional this is how we've always done it approach, and that holistic approach in looking at the factories or the manufacturing facility as a whole is becoming a very big part of our sales team's learnings and how we provide insights to the customers, because it's no longer just acceptable just to provide a solution. We have to understand the whole application and actually be able to give the customer insights on how we as a company and other people, there's other big companies out there as well, can provide solutions that actually benefit not just energy, not just CO2 reduction, but also their production. That could be from, let's say, product quality. So using industrial gases, for example, for laser cutting, if we ensure we have the correct purity and the correct nitrogen levels available, we can ensure that the laser cutting has the best possible chance of producing no bad items for it, let's say. When we look at hydrogen, I think that's another sector where it's not good enough for us just to provide a solution. We have to understand what the customer is trying to do with the solution. And yes, we won't always get it right. I think that's one big thing. I think being, let's say, at the forefront of technology constantly is a challenge, because we're always trying to change something slightly and adjust something, which just cause some headaches sometimes. But the reality is, I think if you have the right people in the right places with the right passion, then we will succeed in reducing global emissions. And I think we're starting to see that across different continents as well. It's becoming much and much more prevalent. So I think it's a very hard question to answer in terms of how do I see the industry going. But I think the reality is we're in the right direction, but we have to keep pushing harder and harder, and we have to continually do that.
I agree with you. I think it's a very good point about the product quality and the process. So because as I always say that energy efficiency is not the goal per se, is energy efficient system is the result of the system that works right. Right. So
Correct.
and this is extremely important to see the energy efficiency not as a burden, as many facilities see, like, okay, now the energy efficiency project, we need to have the investment, we need to have this kind of stuff. But maybe not. Maybe in this question. So, how do customers usually see now? Do they see any energy efficiency projects or reduction in the consumption as the okay, now where I find money, where I find capex for this? What is the ROI? Or it's rather than, yes, the prices are so high, the energy bill now is so high, so it's actually inevitable road now to reduce it. What is it? What is your experience now with your clients?
I think we have a wide base of clients for sure. So depending on the sector, we see different routes which customers are taking. That's absolutely clear. But let's say the customers are most focused on trying to improve their operations and system efficiencies and control systems. We see those customers actually driving us now as well. So not just Atlas Copco in my case, or the other providers. We see customers coming to us sometimes for solutions we don't always have, which is super interesting as well, because we try and have every single solution possible, but that's not always the case. So sometimes, even as, let's say, the largest compressor company in the world, we're still learning. So there's lots of learnings to be made from other companies that are doing things maybe better than us in some cases, and maybe we're doing things better than others in other cases. So I think the customer's journey is what's key. The customer is really key for us. And we really believe in, if we can eventually get to a point where scope 3 is something we can potentially look at and really have some, not so much control, but an insight into actually how we can affect scope 3, I think that's when we will see real change, and other big companies will see that as well.
Yeah, I think to have an impact on that, it's an extremely important. And in your opinion, what is driving these changes? Is more the regulatory initiatives, like such as the Green Deal and new ISO standards, or it's really more like the customers that you just emphasize that the customer is extremely important? So in your opinion, is it like 50-50, or it's rather depends on the timing or depends on some other things?
I think it probably is 50-50. It does
Okay.
depend on the, so any regulatory documents or information that is required for certain customers' applications absolutely drive the business in the right direction. Absolutely. But it is then also the customer's choice to then work towards that. And we do see a lag in some industries more than others, where information is available and certain standards are set, and it takes a certain time frame to achieve those, which we all know. But I do think that we have to keep pushing regulatory bodies, even though the UK is out of the EU, for, let's say. I still think together the whole block provides a big insight into just how we should do business, and almost how we should almost set a standard. And I think without the regulatory bodies providing information on this and stature, I think it wouldn't go in the right direction. So I think, if anything, we need more, and we have to drive that and ensure that the customers then have to, it's enforced.
Effectively.
effectively.
Yes, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's extremely important to set some standards. Okay, and then as we're closing our unfortunately very short podcast, there are so many topics to discuss. I hope that maybe we can have it on the regular basis, discussing
Yeah.
some certain applications.
Awesome.
Uh, what do you think will excite you more in the next couple of years in the compressed air and gas industry? So you already mentioned the hydrogen, the sustainability goals, understanding scope 3. Like what would be the personally for you, what is like, because I see that you're very passionate about this. So what you will be your next passion?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think working with all the different sectors, I think deep down, compressors, whether or not it's low pressure or high pressure, will always be a strong passion of mine. But I do think that carbon capture is something that will be, as we move towards an eco-friendly future. I think we all know that that future is in our hands. It's
Mm-hmm.
nobody else. It's the people who are developing the technologies, manufacturing, and the businesses today. So I think, from my point of view, as carbon capture starts to become much more mainstream, let's say, and we
Yeah.
start to see more and more applications um, across the industry, I think that's what will. I think that will be super exciting in the next few years. The developments we will see.
Well, I can't wait to see it working on the large scale. So it's a very exciting topic, and maybe next time we also can discuss more about the carbon capture with you.
Yeah, fantastic. No, I'd be excited to do that because I think, yeah, I think it's going to be an absolutely essential thing that companies will have to do, particularly all the huge manufacturing facilities that will just they have to have a solution, and there has to be something done in the coming future.
I agree with you. Chris, thank you so much. It was super interesting to dive into the generation of compressed air and gases. Thank you so much. And well, we'll see you next time when we'll talk more about carbon capture and the other applications.
No, fantastic. Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. I'm quite honoured. But yes, thank you very much, Elvira. And I look forward to seeing more podcasts in the future.
Thank you.